Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Michi Makes Up. Today we're going to take a very dedicated look at the new Sonia G Lotus Brush set. This set comes with 6 brushes, so unlike her previous set releases where it's typically 5 brushes for either face or eyes, this set is a mix of the two. So there are 3 for complexion products for your face and then 3 for your eyes. These brushes are made in Kumano, Japan, as is the case with Sonia G's other brushes. And it does have a mixture of both dyed goat hair and undyed goat hair, and also synthetic fibers. So this brush here, which is just called the base brush, is made up of goat hair and synthetic fibers. The rest are all goat hair. So what we're gonna do is I will demo each of these brushes and talk more about them. At the end, I'm going to also compare against Sonia G brushes that I have in my collection. And they're not really repeats what I have because I don't have all of her brushes, but I think talking about what I have is gonna help me just explain a little bit better and go more in depth on how these might be different. And because I don't have all of her brushes, none of these shapes are repeats for me. There are 3 brushes in here that have that are existing shapes that you can find in her collection, and there's 1 brush that is basically the same brush as you would find in her other set. So we'll talk about that as we get to it. The first thing I'm going to do is, I only have my brows done, so I don't even have primer on. I like to put primer on and blend it out with the base brush here. So I have my Victoria Beckham Cell Rejuvenating Priming Moisturizer, and this is in Golden. So I'm just going to do this. Actually, I did pump out a generous amount here. And I'm going to go in with the base brush. Now, normally for primer, I just use my fingers. But today, I'd like to demonstrate this brush by using both liquids and cream products. So I think it's blended in pretty well, and you definitely want the skin to absorb it. I mean, golden is beautiful. That tint is perfect for the summer. And I would not be surprised if people used it during the winter time too, because it's just so pretty. And this base brush here that I mentioned earlier is made up of synthetic and goat hairs. It is with the same combination as her Fusion set, which I did order when it came back in stock last week. It doesn't look like they've shipped it out yet, and it's kind of marked with like a back order when I look at that, you know, purchase receipt. So who knows what's happening there? Maybe they're just waiting for some brushes to come in before they send out the whole set. I do hope I get it soon because I just know how popular that set is, and it just looks amazing. And if they are anything like this, which they're supposed to be, it also feels amazing on the skin. And when you look at it like this, I cannot tell it has a mix of synthetic fibers. Not that I have a trained eye for it, but when I look at brushes that I do have with synthetics, like this one here, this is a Sephora brush, it feels so different. And when Sonia G says, I found the perfect combination for a brush to really be workhorse brushes for creams and liquids, and this is the combination that I find to be best, like I believe her. I totally believe her. Using this just now, it feels great. And my first exposure to her synthetic and natural hair combination is gonna be this mini base. And I love this brush as well. So like this one so far, next thing I'm gonna do is put some concealer under my eyes, and then we'll go back using this brush to add cream foundation. For concealer, I'm actually gonna take the worker brush here because it has undyed goat hair. I could use it for both powders, liquids, and cream, and I just like to test it out and see how well it might blend in this concealer for me. So this is somewhat blended in. I think it did okay. not my preferred. I think, you know, feeling it on my skin as it's going through the product, this is definitely gonna perform better with like a cream eyeshadow rather than something like concealer. So I'm gonna add a bit more and use a different brush for that. And this is the Koyudo finger brush. And I think it does a good job with concealer blending. Next, I'm adding some highlight in the form of a concealer. And it's just to cover any redness or dullness on my face to help brighten it up. And I think I can go back now to the base brush to do it because we're working with larger areas. And then I'm ready to go in with foundation. These two products I'm using for concealer and foundation, they're actually, as you can see, stick products, and they're both Merit, and they're really the same thing. It's just that the one I'm using for concealer is a lighter shade because I do prefer a brightening effect, and the deeper shade is gonna be for the all over face color. What I do sometimes too is after I finish blending this shade out, the deeper shade as like an all over color, I might go back in and touch up or add in to lighten up certain areas so I can have more dimension on my face. And the Merit Complexion stick can be used as both a concealer and foundation. And I love the versatility of that product. So with everything blended in, I'm going to come closer and take a look here. I think the brush did a great job melding all the product together, the two different shades, and it does look blended in. I do think because of the shape and how it's just much bigger, I do think these areas here require a closer look and perhaps going in with a smaller brush to better blend out. And this is not really unexpected for me. Like I always have trouble just making sure my foundation blends right in here and sits in that area. So having to go through with a different brush, a smaller brush to do that is not, you know, it's expected for me. So, so far I like the base brush. It feels fantastic. It's really soft. And when I compare it to the Merit synthetic brush, I would say how they perform and how everything looks on the face, it's close. And I really couldn't tell you that there's too much of a difference. This might do a better job of not moving the product around too much as you're blending it, even though it's such a densely packed brush. This brush, as you're using it, you can just feel like it's built to last. It's built to be used often, and whether you go in light-handed or you tend to be a little bit more aggressive, whatever pressure you use, and you don't really have to use a lot of pressure to blend the product in, but whatever pressure you're most comfortable with, it's going to be able to work with you on that. So I think, you know, you feel the versatility and you feel like this is, again, made to last, like built to last. This brush in comparison, the application I would say is the same, just as good. Some people might argue this one might be better. This point here with the brush, I think gets these areas better than this one, because this is it's more densely packed and it feels more blunt. Now, as I use this brush, it's gonna splay out some more. So maybe by that time, it's gonna make a difference too and like match this in terms of just that point. What I think the major difference between these two is longevity. This brush, I'm fairly certain is gonna outlast this one. Brush, every time I wash it, I feel like the fibers, you know, they hang on to the soap residue like just a bit more than the previous time. So I just wonder if over time it's not going to be as effective as blending product because of all that residue buildup that you can't easily wash out. And I do, as much as possible, a very thorough job with washing off the soap. And the soap I use is very gentle. It's meant for baby use, and it's a clean formulation, basically, no fragrance. And so that's what I've noticed. And the Sonia G brushes and the natural hair brushes, I don't have that experience. So I think that's the main difference between these two if I really had to like analyze it and be very detailed. Next, I'm going to set the foundation, and I'm actually going to use Sonia G's Phase 1 brush. This came back in stock about a week before her Lotus set was launched, and then also at the same time before the Fusion set was restocked. So it's definitely the last half of this month is all about brushes, Sonia G brushes in particular. And I had been really interested in Phase 1 because of that flat top and how the brush kind of splays out. And I'm sure with more usage, it's going to continue to do that. I'm just interested to see how it works, how well it works in laying on all over face powder. I think with a size 2, it's perfect for what I'm looking for. This brush, the handle, and you can see this here, is quite a bit different. I mean, not only in color, but just the thickness of it. If you compare this to even her Sky face set, you know how this has a taper here? These ones are much bigger, and they actually become wider at the base. And also with the restock, on the brush is this printed diamond shape. It's to denote how these brushes are made with, I believe, a different manufacturer, because Sonia G wanted to keep these brushes to be, you know, exactly the same as her original, as she's creating more for restocks. But due to shortage issues, she had to source other manufacturers. And I think the diamond is to denote that. So these ones are, you know, made with the same specs, but they're not exactly the same because the manufacturer had changed, something along those lines. But I'll try to find the article where she talks about this in great detail, and I'll have the link below so you guys can check it out if you want to. So let's get to buffing in that all over face powder. So I just swirled it around. First thing I noticed with this brush is how effectively it picks up product when the powders are just kind of along the edges, because these bristles right along here picks them right up. And so even as I'm getting to the end and I would have to tip this over to get more powder, I can use what's at the edge here to just, you know, do some more additions, like right at the ends here, and I don't have to tip it over. So in terms of that, it's already faster for me to use this brush. And I feel like here, I did some additional concealing after we blended in the foundation, and you can see that by using this to buff the powder in, it didn't end up moving the concealer too much. And I think before with this brush, which is the Master Face from the Sky Face set, I felt like this was more prone to moving these areas here where I wanted the product to really stay put and just have a layer of powder over top. So, you know, I like this flat top design for sure. For eyeshadow, I'm going to go into Chantecaille's Mermaid Eye Shade in a matte finish with the Builder brush. And I'm just packing on the shade all over the lids. And the Builder brush is an undyed goat hair version of the Builder 3 in her existing collection. And with this brush, even though because of its size and how it's not as densely packed and the hairs are longer, like this comes to a taper point, whereas this comes to like a flat point at the top. This is good for blending, but still gives you control because it's not as splayed out at the bottom. Like you can see, it's hung on very tightly through the ferrule, Whereas any of the blending brushes, like crease brushes, blending brushes, they have that shape and they come up to like this dome that has like more surface area than the bottom here. So this is really good to apply, I think, powders for the most part, and it's dyed goat hairs. So powders really just all over the eye, while this gives you more control, and of course you can use it for creams and liquids. And then I'm gonna go back into a different mermaid eye color. This is in the shade Starfish. The one I was using before in the matte finish, it's called Olivia. Starfish has a metallic finish. So I'm just adding that on right here. And I didn't talk about this when I was just using the worker brush just now. There is another brush in an existing set from Sonia G that is, well, I wouldn't say exactly like it, but it has the same specs, and both are with undyed goat hair. And Sonia G did note in her blog where she talks about the Lotus set this is one of her most, multi-purpose, multifunctional brushes, and she considers this brush as like really important as part of her like brush making journey. So I thought that was a cool bit of detail. So with that now, I'm ready to blend out again, Starfish using the worker brush. And then I'm going to Pangolin, which is Chantecaille's luminescent eye shade, and putting that starting at the center of the lid, but just kind of generously all over. Now this is gonna give your look that added extra dimension, especially when you're moving, blinking. I'm actually gonna take worker again to blend out some of that powder shade Pangolin. And then next I'm taking the soft definer. This is a new shape, a new brush shape, and this is described by Sonia G as a cross between a pencil brush and a crease brush. So I have a pencil brush here from Sonia G, which comes up to like, not a fine point, but pretty, small point here. And here's the mini booster, which can be a crease brush, but I like to use it for a lot of outer corner detailed work. I feel like between the pencil and mini booster, soft definer sits right here between these two. And I did pick up a crease brush earlier, so this is a crease brush. What I like to use the soft definer for is to add some detail onto the lower lash line, and I feel like this is just going to give me enough control because it's nice and small so that it doesn't, spread too much under the eye, but I'm also not looking for a tight line. And I'm going back in with Starfish, and then I'm going back into Olivia and just adding Olivia on top of Starfish. For blush, I'm going to use Chantecaille's Cheek Gelée in the shade Lively. You guys know I've been really into cream blushes. I got this during, the, I think July 4th sale that was happening on Look Fantastic. So I'm gonna go in to use the cheek brush with this cream product. Looks like I have a good amount, so I'm just going to play it safe. Add in a second application. For highlighter, I am using Lisa Eldridge's Elevated Glow, and this is in the shade Crystal Nebula. Just a tiny dab. Goes a long ways. And I'm gonna go back in with the same cheek brush as before, and we're gonna try to use that to blend out this highlight. So I'm gonna change my brush here because I wanted to see what it was like to use it for more detailed work, and I think given how fluffy it is here at the top, a brush like this is going to do a better job with the detailed work that you're trying to be more precise with the placement, be more precise with the diffusion of it. This is great for blush because of the area and how you can just really bounce it on. But for something like this, what I'm looking for is probably going to be better using this kind of, again, that paddle brush that's really tightly bound here. And this is Koyudo's BP number 14, their foundation brush. Okay, and I didn't mention this before, but the base brush is also a new shape. So the brushes that are of a new shape that does not exist in any of her other releases so far are going to be these three. This is the soft definer base brush, and this one we haven't used yet. This is the detail brush. The three brushes that do exist in her collection, at least in terms of shape, is going to be these three. The builder and cheek brushes are going to be undyed versions of what already exists, whereas the worker brush is same specs. There's an undyed version of it as well. The only difference is going to be the handle and ferrule. I'm going to apply some contour to my face, and I'm going to go into my Victoria Beckham matte bronzing brick, and I'm using the shade here, which is Honey. And we're going to see how well this angled brush works for that. And this angled brush here could also be used for blush, but right now the shape, since it's fresh, it's new, and it was sitting in a brush guard after I washed it, it's not very splayed out. So I feel like we'll just try for contour. And this detail brush, again, is a new shape. You know, what's interesting is that it doesn't grab like a lot of product in comparison to a fan brush that I use. So it's actually kind of nice. You know, I'm seeing the color added in, but it's blending out really nicely with this brush, and it's not too much product. I'm gonna try to do that. I like how that looks. So let me put on mascara, eyeliner, then we'll come back for the finished look, and then we'll talk about the brushes in summary and do some comparisons. And for lips, I'm going to use Hermès's Rose Nuit, and this is in a matte finish. This is the finished look. I am going out tonight, so I wanted to do something kind of smoky, not a look I would normally do during the daytime, and I think this turned out pretty good. Although, what I did notice is outside of this kind of studio lighting, I do look a little bit washed out because this Olivia shade is like has a strong gray and kind of silvery undertone, so I might add something to deepen that, but in front of the lights, I think it has the effect that I was looking for. That's okay. I'll come back later and fix it up before I actually head out. So now I want to talk about the brushes in summary and then do some comparisons. So what I didn't spend too much time on in the beginning is the actual handle themselves. This handle, the ferrule, beautiful, gorgeous. So this is made out of brass, and you can see here, it's a gradient effect that she wanted to have. So we start from really dark purple, and you can see these gold, well, I think you can see them through the camera, gold flecks. And the gold flecks kind of extend all the way through that purple shade. It's really, really beautiful. And then as we come up here, it lines up to a lighter purple, and then turns into like a Sakura pink shade, and finally white. And it was a conscious decision that you can see the gradient as you go through, that you can see the specks of like the purple. It's more grainy in visuals, and this was to mimic how flower petals are. This is called the Lotus set because it's influenced by the lotus flower in terms of, I guess, just the color and maybe how the petals themselves might have a gradient effect to them as well. And this, let's just talk about this for a moment here. I love this. This is so pretty. This is such a pretty color. And the way that, you know, this color alone, if the handle was this color and this was maybe black, it would still be really beautiful because this is a beautiful purple. But I think it wouldn't have the same kind of sophistication and the level of detail that something like this does, because it's gradient, so therefore it's more work to make it look like this, the handles. And then to give this brush like even more pop, even something a bit more special to pair with the already very special handle and the gold flecks right here, is she decided to go with this purple. And I think it's perfection. That's the only word I can use to describe this, is perfection. Just makes you very happy looking at them, and it's hard to take your eyes off them. And in my opinion, I think this is her most beautiful brush set yet. And it really has to do with the colors, the choice of colors. She chose purple because she mentioned how a lot of people had asked about this color, and I guess they gave some feedback and was like, we would love to see maybe brushes with purple handles or something, and she made it happen, so wonderful. In terms of this base brush, the only other brush in my collection that is similar is going to be this Sephora Pro Full Coverage Airbrush, and this is number 53. This is all synthetic, and the shape looks like you could really do a great deal, and that is true. You can use it to blend out concealer, you can put foundation, you can use it for bronzer, contour, you can really do all of that. But this, hands down, this combination of natural hair, synthetic is so much better because it doesn't move the product around too much, like the shape of the brush and the length of the bristles. It doesn't move the product around too much, and it still gives you good coverage of your product. I wouldn't say this brush does anything particular in terms of increasing product coverage. I think it gives you the coverage the product has, but it doesn't really, you know, naturally build upon it. I do think you can use this brush to build on top of your foundation, but it's just gonna blend normally. It's not gonna really have that added packing on effect, but it feels great on the skin. This feels like it moves foundation. If you're not careful and you use too much pressure, this is way more forgiving, easier to use. Just the size of it, the handle, how like the ferrule comes up to, you know, more of it covers more of the bristles is also another factor. So I think she made really interesting choices here that made this actually overall easier to use. I do not normally put on foundation with a fan brush because I used this and I didn't like it. Therefore, I kind of stirred clear. And then I also wanted to mention the other fan brush I have in my collection is also from Sonia G. And I want to mention that the other fan brush I do have in my collection is also from Sonia G. This is the Worker fan from her Sky Face set. You can technically use this for creams and liquids and also to apply foundation, but this is much loosely packed together than this. And I think while this can do the job, I think it's going to give you a very light foundation coverage, and you might not, maybe even too sheer of coverage, just by how, you know, feeling how this is packed together versus this very dense brush. So I thought I'd show you my other fan brush from Sonia G. Next, I do want to talk about the soft definer. True to its name, the soft definer is very, very soft. And I really did enjoy using it on the lower lash line. You know, this area here is pretty sensitive because you're just like millimeters away from your eyeball. And sometimes, you know, when I'm not careful, I just tend to poke myself. But this being so soft kind of gives me a little bit of peace of mind. And it does come up to this tapered point. And it's a pretty fine point too. So if you're holding the brush perpendicular to this area you're covering, I think you're gonna have a much better time and less likely to poke yourself in the eye. Obviously you can use it flat like this too to get more area, but as a point, it can be very precise and you're not going to poke yourself. So no complaints there. And I'll hold it up next to the mini booster once more. I like to try using this brush to work these kind of detailed areas here. I think it would be really very, very effective. The mini booster is also good at doing this sort of detail, but I think for the more, like even more detailed work, the soft definer is going to be your go-to brush for that. And finally, the pencil brush here, because this is a cross between pencil and a crease brush. The pencil brush comes to a pretty fine point. The point, however, is much more dense than this. And it's quite, it's quite stiff, so you get a very concentrated, whatever you decide to draw. There's a good use for this pencil brush as well, and in my opinion, I don't think having a pencil brush means that you don't need the soft definer. You can achieve something to that effect with the pencil brush, but if you wanted to have like a softer effect, you'd have to go back with something else, like maybe the mini booster or a brush like it, or some other brush to blend out the shade. The soft definer can do both, because you can apply the color on its point and then angle it this way to blend it out. So I think this one has more versatility. For the Builder brush, I have a Builder Pro from her Pro Eye set. And let me just put these two side by side. This is wider. The hair lengths are shorter. It is also more tightly packed right here. So this gives you a lot of precision and control. When you use it just right here like that, you can also use it to draw on your lower lash line. You can use it to line your upper lash line, so you can have that kind of control. But the way that I use it today was just putting, eyeshadow all over the lid, which was effective too because it's much wider and the time it requires doesn't take a lot. This in comparison, because it's not as tightly packed here and also it's longer, you have slightly less control, but sometimes you do want that depending on how you want to put on your color, what you want it to look like. You don't have as much control, but I think it also does pack on product pretty well. So you don't get necessarily a light color payoff. I think it's really decent and appropriate for the way this brush is, for the way it looks, the way it's designed. And this is just it's more precision, more control. I think these two would actually work pretty well together because you can pack on product with this brush, go in with this to blend it out a little bit more. And then obviously you can use this for under the eyes as well, whereas this is not really so appropriate for that purpose. For the worker brush, I do have the Worker Pro. It's not the same. The two are also of undyed hairs. This is obviously wider, thicker, longer hairs. And when Sonia G says this is like one of her most multi-purpose brush, I definitely see that. It's wide, almost like the Jumbo Blender. And so you can use it to blend like I did today, but it's soft and not as densely packed as the blender, so it can do more precision work. And it comes up to this, nice dome shape, so you can use it as a point to even do more fine work if you wanted to. There's just a lot. You can use it to pack on shadow and then blend it out. You can use it to pack deeper shadow here and then move it on its head to blend into or draw into the crease and then blend out in the crease. So you could really do a lot. I think it'd be interesting to see if you could complete an entire eye look with just this brush. For the cheek brush, I do have the Soft Cheek from Sonia G, and I might actually prefer this one a bit more because it's so bouncy, and I feel like it diffuse, like if you had too much product on, it's easier to diffuse than this. This brush here, given it's, I have it in the brush guard, so it should be splayed out a little bit more and a little bit fluffier, but this is very precise. And when I use this brush, it's really great for blushes that are lighter. and because I can grab more product with it, it saves me time from having to go back in more often. This brush is going to be good for, you know, anytime you have something really pigmented and you're just not sure how it's going to turn out. I think this one is going to save you from having to make corrections. Yeah, really like how this feels. It's super soft. Like if it was called a soft cheek, just like this one, I'd be like, yeah, that would be the soft cheek brush. It feels really nice. And finally, for the detailed brush, the most similar brush that I can think of is going to be the mini cheek. And even then, you know, because this has both dyed and undyed goat hair, that's why it reminds me, just because of the aesthetic. The shape, obviously this is slanted. I really like using this for contour right here. We'll see what it's like once it's more splayed out, but I really like it, and it's easy, and I usually use my fan brush. With this fan brush, it's easy to get too much product, and you have to really work much harder to blend out. This here was the opposite, but in a good way. It didn't take that much product, and when you lay it down, you start blending it, it just really melds in quickly and easily, but still give you like that contour I was looking for. And this fits so nicely up here. I could probably do this too. This might be more appropriate because you want to cover more area and just more tapered as you go down. I find that this is going to be a great contour brush. I love to use it for cheek as well, for blush. We'll see how that works. So there is my review and demo of the Lotus set. The way I think of the Lotus set is it's just made with so many wow factors in it, from the colors and the detail on the handle to this here. There's 3 new shapes and 6 brushes in total in the set. You've got face brushes, eye brushes, there's so many things going for it that even if you have like your go-to brush set, but you're interested in this, I would seriously consider it. It's limited edition, and I don't think she has plans to bring back limited editions anytime. I would really consider it. I think it's so beautiful, so special, so functional and multi-purpose, every single one of these brushes. And if you're already a Sonia G fan or you're a collector, you probably have the set coming to you anyway. But if you're on the fence, the way that I see it is these brushes, actually all of her brushes, can be used for different purposes. Like a single eye brush, this one for example, I could do a lot with it. So I'm not getting the set because I'm missing something. I'm getting the set because I'm a fan of hers and I collect some brushes, and I think this is so exquisite. It's gonna, you know, elevate my collection overall. Let me know below what you think of this set, and I look forward to talking to you guys more about it. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.